на ту пору. Ой, прийди, прийди, да ми милий на
Hi, welcome to my fourth video here at War, Peace, and Ethics. Today is a brief video, although maybe actually not so brief, as we discuss the recent missile incursion into Poland and the international reaction. But first, an update. You may recall that we discussed the political ambitions of Yevgeny Prigozhin, the CEO of the Wagner Group, the infamous mercenary organization that's fought alongside Russian military forces in Ukraine and elsewhere. A few hours after I posted, 4 days ago, it emerged that a fighter for the Wagner Group who had been captured by Ukrainian forces and then defected had apparently been executed in Russia by a blow to the head with a sledgehammer. The details are still sketchy. The victim, Yevgeny Nuzhin, had been serving a long prison sentence in Russia for murder, but joined the Wagner Group when Prigozhin offered convicts an attractive signing package along with a payout to family members if they were killed during combat operations in Ukraine. Mr. Nuzhin had evidently been captured first by Ukrainian forces, then defected to the Ukrainian side, and finally, according to information currently available, was either kidnapped by pro-Russian agents while walking in Kiev or was part of an agreed-upon prisoner swap. If it was the latter, then there are troubling questions that the Ukrainian government needs to answer. The Ukrainian president's office, I should add, has reportedly announced that Nuzhin voluntarily went back to Russia as part of the swap, something that seems incomprehensible given what he must have known might happen. There may have been some coercion involved if this version is accurate. For example, it's possible that his family was at some risk as long as he remained in Ukraine. We just don't know yet and may never know. I'll try to work on this in the coming days. At any rate, his execution with a sledgehammer, which has purportedly been documented on video, which I haven't watched and won't link to, was defended by Prigozhin, who said, "A dog receives a dog's death." And our favorite Kremlin mouthpiece, Margarita Simonian, put it this way.
Любой человек имеет право на ошибку, но человек не имеет права на вранье. Человек, тем более от которого зависят жизни людей, судьбы целых городов и части народа, не может себе позволить это делать. И пока вот очень сильно, больно, кувалдой, как сейчас в интернете, по рукам или по голове не долбанут таким людям, вряд ли эти ошибки будут быстро исправлены.
Let's turn to the aftermath of the Polish missile incident. By now, 4 days after a Russian-made missile landed in rural Poland, killing 2 civilians, it's clear that this was almost certainly an unintentional violation of Polish airspace. That much we know, or at least that much we can conclude with reasonable certainty. From the beginning, even without knowing the trajectory of the missile, which NATO's been looking into, it's possible to deduce that a deliberate or even mistaken Russian strike into Poland was the least probable explanation. Polish and NATO officials agree that the missile appears to have been an S-300, which is nominally an anti-aircraft weapon. The S-300 has been around for decades and is a stalwart of post-Soviet countries' air defense systems. Both Russia and Ukraine have these missiles in their inventories. And while the most advanced models, used by the Russians only, have an extended range, these missiles are designed for specific high-value targets, such as NATO AWACS aircraft. The Poles have identified the missile in question as an older variant, and these earlier models typically have ranges of between 40 and 100 kilometers, depending on the specific type. More advanced models have ranges of up to 150 kilometers. As we can see from this map, if the center point is the Polish village where the missile hit, and the radius is, let's say, 150 kilometers, the maximum likely, this rules out not only all of Russia, but also all Ukrainian territory currently held by Russian forces. However, a large swath of unoccupied Ukrainian territory does fall within the range of an S-300. except, as you might be able to see, a very small section of extreme southwestern Belarus, just about 150 kilometers away. Long-range Russian rockets and drones that the Russians have obtained from Iran have a much greater range and have been used against a variety of targets during the war, most recently targeting the Ukrainian electrical grid. The Iranian Shahed 136 drone, for example, has a range of up to 1,500 miles, well within the radius necessary for landing in Poland if fired from Russia or Russian-held Ukrainian territory. But again, the missile has been identified as a likely S-300, which is used by both sides against aircraft, but has been modified in some cases for use against ground targets. Nevertheless, given the limited range of the S-300, it appears that the most logical explanation is, as President Biden stated, a Ukrainian missile that may have been defending a Ukrainian target and landing in a Polish field, killing 2 civilians. As soon as news of the missile strike was publicized, some Western media outlets were reporting that it was a deliberate Russian attack on a NATO member, and President Zelensky also seemed to be accusing Russia of having intentionally attacked Poland.
Дорогі українці, сьогодні ворог здійснив черговий масований ракетний удар по нашій країні. Загалом 90 ракет. Уражені енергосистема, підприємства, житлові будинки. Булись. Росії кажуть про мир, а вона ракети у відповідь. Їй кажуть про глобальні кризи, які Росія ж спричинила, а вона іранські дрони у відповідь. Їй 10 пунктів, щоб закінчити війну, а вона по 10 ракет на кожен пункт про мир. О 3:45 ранку сьогодні я приєднався до саміту, щоб представити наші пропозиції, як відновити мир і міжнародний порядок. Світ почув Україну, учасники G19 робили свої заяви.
But not long afterwards, as Polish personnel were examining the remnants of the weapon, President Joe Biden made cautious remarks, which, as far as I was concerned, was exactly what he should have done.
There is preliminary information that contests that. I don't want to say that till we completely investigate, but it is. It's unlikely in the minds of the trajectory that it was fired from Russia, but we'll see. We'll see.
And Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov, comparing Biden's comments to those elsewhere, praised the, quote, restrained and much more professional reaction of the American side and the American president, unquote. The response from Peskov is in contrast to the nutty reaction by Dmitry Medvedev, whom we mentioned at length last week in our profile of possible successors to Vladimir Putin. In a Twitter post on Wednesday, Medvedev said this: "The incident with the Ukrainian alleged missile strike on a Polish farm proves just one thing. Waging a hybrid war against Russia, the West moves closer to world war." For his part, President Zelensky reiterated his earlier accusation that the Russians had deliberately attacked Poland, although he then seemed to leave some wiggle room for himself.
Не сумніваюсь в доповіді вечірній мені особисто від командуючого повітряних сил до главкома Залужного. Я не сумніваюсь в тому, що це була не наша ракета або не наш ракетний удар. Вони не мають сенсу їм не довіряти. Я з ними війну пройшов. І з вами. А можна допустити Україну на місце? Це справедливо? Чесно. Я вважаю, що ми маємо на це право. Поки слідство не закінчилось. А можна не казати остаточні висновки, якщо немає слідства?
Zelensky seems to want it both ways, digging in while also acknowledging that an impartial investigation should take place. Okay, he may be taking these two mildly contradictory positions because he's beginning to realize that his initial assistance that the missile could not have been Ukrainian might be wrong. It's also possible that the president is being misled by his military staff. If this is the case, and it slowly dawns on the president that his generals are feeding him misinformation, he should sack those responsible. I should add that he's fired generals before, although for other reasons. Nothing in wartime is more important to a leader than getting the unvarnished truth from his advisors. The alternative can be catastrophic. Finally, there was a lot of almost hysterical talk about Article 5 of the NATO Charter being invoked. We'll look at NATO in depth in the next week or so, and I don't want to get bogged down in the details today. Suffice it to say that triggering Article 5 takes place at all only when a member is unambiguously and deliberately attacked, even had the missile been launched from Russia. Landing in a random field and killing 2 civilians is not what the Charter's framers had in mind. So what are the lessons here? The first is that caution and patience are paramount during crises, and leaders need to keep their emotional reactions in check lest they obscure a more logical and dispassionate examination of the facts. Wars have begun when that didn't happen. Journalists can help when they subject the facts available to geographic and forensic scrutiny and expert opinion, something that would have curbed the feeding frenzy in the first few hours of this crisis. As many analysts and world leaders have pointed out, the ultimate responsibility for the deaths of the 2 Polish citizens is Russia's, since it is they who have invaded Ukraine. The missile thus would never have been fired if not for the ongoing Russian assault against Ukrainian targets. That's all for now. Since we're on the subject of NATO, I'll no doubt post a longer video or 2 soon on the alliance's history and its purpose. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons and go to About Me to make a small monthly donation on Patreon or buy me a coffee of $5 or more. Many thanks.
Ой, прийди, да ми милий на розмову. Ой, прийди, да ми милий на розмову. Ой, прийди, да ми милий на розмову.